Hello Lima, brought to you by Good Food Restaurant, home of Happy Days, Beer Barrel, and Old City Prime. Also by Mercy Health Partners, 318 Restaurant and Bar, Lima Palette Company, and Fresh and Faded Hair Studio.
Welcome to Hello Lima, a community perspective. Well, a verdict has been read and justice has been served. A case that many people are talking about over the last few days has been in the public eye. And fortunately, we get a chance to talk about it today. Welcome my guest today, former LPD police officer Chris Jackson, owner of Fresh and Fade, where we're here today talking about this barbershop, Dre Johnson, and of course my legal scholar that's been on the show a couple of times, Attorney Jerry Pitts. We're going to get into some of the talk and some of the discussion that surrounded this trial and what does Lima think about this verdict. Welcome, guys. Certainly having a pleasure having you guys. This is going to be a really informal conversation, and we're going to talk about something that's on the minds of everybody. I say everybody, I mean everybody has been talking about the George Floyd verdict. Let me read something real quick with you. We certainly, I'm good to have the attorney here, and I'm going to start off with you if I could. On the screen, the viewers are looking at something that was put out by the Minneapolis Police Department the day after George Floyd was killed. And I'm going to use that word when I talk about this because that's what happened. And this is what it says, Mr. Pitts. Officers were able to get the suspect into handcuffs and noted he appeared to be suffering medical distress. Officers called for an ambulance where he died a short time later. Now Chauvin was found guilty of second degree, third degree manslaughter, which means what the police put out did not happen. You as somebody who I mean, you save lives. You have people next to you who you try to keep rendering justice. How do you balance the fact that the police sometimes don't tell the truth and we get to where we are today?
Well, I don't believe it's necessarily not telling the truth. Often there is such an exchange of information, and also during those times there is excitement, and we can't say that the officers don't get excited as well as anybody else.
Absolutely.
They're human. However, from a defense perspective, what you do is when you get that discovery, you go what we call discovery. That should control what happened before, during, and after. And then once you get that and you go through that, you should be able to see through that discovery and things that happens, and you also
get a sense of what happened.
You get a sense as to what happened.
Well,
now, everybody's supposed to have those body cameras on, but what happens and the strange things that occurs is often those body cameras are not attached sufficiently to one's body, and anytime there is any action, the camera goes one way, and the bodies are in another.
And when we want to get into the camera, because I think it played an important role on this, can you hand that mic over to the former LPD officer that we have with us today? And those were good points, Mr. Pitts, and I appreciate that. Let me ask you this, Chris, as a former police officer, and what we're going to get into a little bit of today and try to be open and as honest as we can, but we also want to be respectful for the law enforcement because we know they have a tough job. Let me ask you, as a former inspector, not only with the fire department, but a former police officer, is there such a thing as the thin blue line? Do police protect each other, and is it something that will ever change? I don't know, former inspector, if
that's an excellent question. I think it is to some effect. There is that thin blue line.
You've been actually in the police officer. So it does exist to a certain extent.
Oh yeah, definitely, and I think probably more so today than back then. But as you saw in the George Floyd case, the Minnesota Police Department was transparent. The chief came out and said that was not something that they taught. The training officers came out and said that was not something they taught. And I think they realized, law enforcement starting to realize that they can't keep defending these officers that are rogue. It's my belief that Mr. Chauvin, I don't think he went to work that day with the intent on murdering somebody, but somewhere in there, some common sense, some training has to kick in that, hey, this is not going the way it's supposed to go.
It didn't happen. And this guy who put on the uniforms every day for many years, whether it was the fire uniform or whether it's the police uniform, you don't go with the intent to do harm. Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
Exactly. That's not your, I think most officers' intention is to get home safely at the end of the day. But again, somewhere common sense has to take place. Often, they are put in situations. I can remember a situation I had as a police officer, a hostage situation, and it was a situation where I had to make a decision, a split decision. And in my case, I chose not to discharge my firearm, which I probably would have been rightfully so in this particular situation. So a lot of times it's a split second, but in the case of Mr. Chauvin, 9 minutes is a lot. Somewhere in there, 9 minutes has to kick in that, hey, something is not right.
Wow, that's a good point, and I appreciate that. Let me ask you a question, if I could, owner of this establishment, Dre. They call him Leandra, but he's known by Dre. You've been in the front line of communication. I say the barbershop, and we're certainly pleased to be here, is where you hear what people are thinking. Every single day you go to the barbershop, and it'll be your CNN, it'll be your Spectrum News. What are they hearing, Dre? What are you hearing, and how this verdict was handed down a couple of less than 72 hours ago? Did it resonate with you and the community that you come across?
Well, everybody was happy or elated that he got found guilty. A lot of people were thinking like, hey, it's no way that he could not be found guilty. Some people, but then you did have some people that were kind of trying to go against, his guilty. But overall, the majority of people, there was no way that.
What was the talk, Dre, prior to the verdict? Was the talk that he was going to be found guilty? And are you telling me that's what you're hearing your constituents and your coworkers were talking?
The majority of people, well, just about everybody was saying that he should be guilty. It was honestly like no question.
Throughout the trial, as you were hearing this.
Yes.
Let me ask for a guy who's been through the justice system, been through the criminal system, and has come out and has blossomed, has changed the world in terms of how the Lima community sees itself. Do you feel that justice has been served?
You know what? I don't, and this is just my belief, it hasn't been served yet until he's been sentenced. He could be found guilty, but that doesn't mean he's going to receive the maximum. He's a first-time offender, so he's eligible for, I'm assuming, and you help me out if I'm wrong.
Yep.
He's eligible for the minimum amount of time, correct? So justice isn't served. So
you're waiting for the criminal to respond. Let me ask you about that, attorney. Minnesota has the 2/3 rule, right?
What I want to do is I want to caution the public about getting too excited about this situation.
But the public has a right to be excited, particularly the black public.
The public should expect justice to be done,
right,
in any fashion and form for everyone. But what we need to also do is be cautious and careful that the public don't misread more into this conviction than should be.
Explain.
Because there's got to be a sentencing done. There's got a pre-sentence investigation that's got to be done. And even if the judge decides to, what they call split the baby, give it down the middle sentencing, what happens after that is there's going to be appeals. Appeals has got to follow, because after 3 or 4 weeks of testimony, 45 or more witnesses, somebody made a mistake somewhere. That gives you an appealable order. From that appealable order, what can happen next is you can get an appeal bond. So you could potentially see him back out on appeal bond for house arrest.
And that's what Dre's talking about.
So what you got to do, we got to be careful that we don't get too high or too low.
Let me put you on the spot, attorney. Does he deserve the maximum sentence?
Without looking at the PSI.
Let me ask you, does he deserve the...
Without looking at the PSI, which I would have to do as an attorney or as a judge, and without doing that and going into a background of it, has there been other instances that this has been similar? That has happened, but actually nothing came of it.
Nothing came out of it. Let me ask
those
you,
things you should be
those
concerned
things should
about.
be pass that over to the former police officer. What do you think about that? Because Dre brings up an interesting point. Does the sentencing meet does he deserve the maximum?
My opinion, again, looking at it, I think so. I know what Mr. Pitts is saying, with the pre-sentence investigation, they don't look at the background.
That's why he's the legal scholar.
Yes, but again, look at it for what it's worth. Everyone saw what happened, witnesses, testimony. He's guilty. He was found guilty by a jury of his peers. So I do think that it should be a maximum, because there has to be somewhere it has to be made out to the public that we're not going to stand for this anymore. The court system is not going to stand for it. The people are not going to stand for it. There's going to be some situations where police do have to make decisions. And in those decisions there, even if it's a fatal, we have to look at it. There have been some that they were justifiable.
That they were justifiable. And we're getting a great perspective. And you want to jump in real quick before we go to break?
But see, is that you being personal by saying he deserves the maximum? Because isn't justice supposed to be blind? And it does. I mean,
No.
because his background might show that he's not. He
A model officer.
Yeah. Well, no. If his his background, he's never been in trouble.
Right.
So he's not going to get the maximum. Is that correct?
I can't say he's not.
Well, we're going to.
Speaking to the mic.
And when you try to talk about the law being blind, sometimes the blindfold slips down a little.
Yes, and we understand that.
Therefore, it loses that sense of blindness, especially once the media and all of that gets involved. Everybody's human, so you're going to be somewhat affected by it. But my problem is, and we better start thinking about, is that stand your grounds law. That's what's scaring
That's
me.
what's good. Let's do this, man. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the verdict with respect to the Lima itself and the community itself and get you guys' opinion. Don't go away.
From early in the morning when the Happy Days stores open, turn the grills on, get the coffee turned on. Across town, the beer barrels, there's a lot of prep work that has to be done. Sauces being prepped on the stove. At Old City Prime, everything's from scratch. I think the culture in our company is that we care about our people. And in return, our people care about our customers. Thank you so much to all of our team that's worked for us, and thank you so much to all the communities that we're in for being such great customers.
You are the center of a universe. That's what we've learned in 160 years serving our community. Everybody means the world to someone. So when you're in here, or if someday you find yourself in here, and when all you can think about is the world that revolves around you, we'll be a world that revolves around you too. Mercy Health. Healthcare for the universe of you.
Our barbers and cosmetologists are licensed professionals who specialize in all phases of hair. Whether you are getting a line-up, cut, beard trim, or a design, our barbers will help create your unique style. With full-time cosmetologists, also taking appointments and walk-ins from lashes, presses, color, wax to braids, and weaves, Fresh and Faded cosmetologists do it all. Call us for an appointment today. Fresh and Faded Unisex Hair Studio, the largest shop in Northwest Ohio. 419-221-FADE.
If you ain't fresh, you ain't faded.
And welcome back to Hello Lima. It certainly has been an interesting topic with some interesting guests. We're here at the Fresh and Fade Salon. It is action-packed in here, a community that has spoken about the verdict in detail, and we're certainly happy to be here again. I appreciate that. Looking up the Lima News and reading some things about on the hometown station, they've been talking about this verdict. I'm going to ask you, Dre, if I could start off with you again. Does your feeling that Lima, let's talk about Lima community. Show us Hello Lima for a reason. Is justice fair in Lima? Do you think this verdict will make a change? And we certainly all been appreciative of what Chief Martin has done in terms of reaching out in the African American community. What's your perspective? Tell me what are the streets saying?
Well, for me, I don't think this verdict alone is going to affect anything in Lima.
You don't think it will?
No, Lima's his own entity.
Meaning?
The verdict, what happened in Minneapolis, the verdict in Minneapolis has nothing to do with how the court systems run in Lima.
Okay.
You said verdict.
Yep,
now
yep.
Policing, if you want to use the term, or if you're going to say policing,
right?
It should make them think differently, think things of that nature.
Right.
But the police, they're up against a lot.
Yep.
It's not just, and I'm just being real. It might be an unpopular thing to say, but it's not all the police fault.
Yep.
We have to be held accountable for certain things that we do, but then the police have to be held accountable for the things that they do wrong too. So it's not all the police fault.
I follow you, and let me jump on that with you, Inspector, former Inspector. When Dre talks about it's not always the police fault, you've been working with kids for years. You're a staple in the community with regard to working with young people and mentoring them. Tell me your perspective in terms of Lima's justice system.
I think Dre made a good point. I think we as parents, especially in the African American community, we have to reach out to our children and to try to get them to avoid some of the situations that we see happen. We always want to, like Dre said, we want to cast blame on the police officers, but a lot of times we don't see what transpired beforehand. So we need to teach our young men, our young ladies that at times, the police may ask you to do something that may not be popular with you. The idea, though, is to get home safely. Get home to your parents, and then we can go and meet with Chief Martin. I've talked to Chief Martin on several occasions, and one of the issues that we deal with in Lima is that we have, I recruited for 20 years for the city, and we just cannot get people of color to take those tests. We don't have many officers.
Civil service tests.
Civil service tests. So a lot of times the gentlemen and the ladies that we're getting are from small rural communities that have not had interaction with African Americans and with other people, and we've got to find a way to change that.
To get more diversity, particularly in the law enforcement. Well, both of you guys bring a great point. Let me hand it over to you, if I could, Attorney. Is the legal system certainly one who has been on the forefront, on the bench? What is Lima's justice system like over the years that you've been?
Well, the justice system as it is prepared here in Lima is that it's not like a major city where you're having night court, midday courts. You got so many judges that are sitting there that you're on 3 or 4 different floors. What has happened here, most of the people in our criminal or civil justice system are familiar with Lima, Allen County. They've been here for years. And see, that is one of the things that we should note, is that our officers and others they are familiar with the people in the community.
Okay.
A lot of the people who we're seeing in court
are repeat.
It's not their first rodeo.
Repeat offenders.
They have been there several times.
So you're speaking about what Dre is speaking about, more communication too.
And I think our officers, as they know people more, should have a different way they communicate with each one, because they often have dealt with certain offenders before.
Okay,
and
that's
they
a
know
good point.
ones who run.
Yeah.
They know ones who are argumentative. They know those who.
And I'm going to stop you there. That's a good point. What Jerry's talking about is because of the nature of Lima's community, you have a familiarity, and with that familiarity, there should be an opportunity for more dialogue, more opportunities.
More dialogue and less unnecessary confrontation.
Okay, all right.
Now,
That's
they often know the fathers or the uncles or somebody in the family or somebody, and I think as calm as they can be, the calmer maybe the offender would be.
Right. So let me ask you a quick question, because I know we're running up against another break. But recently, Chief Martin passed a case over to an independent review board. Those are the types of things are favorable for the justice system.
Well, my problem is it has to go somewhere, but another review board, to me, is just another board in between making another decision by somebody. Now, what happens with these review boards is that they really don't have any teeth to do anything but make a recommendation. If we want a board to be effective, it has to have the right to do something. Like the Civil Service Board, it can at least hire and can take some actions. We need boards that have teeth with the authority to say, you did this and you're suspended.
Okay, so as I get back to this case, this is a good point. Let me ask you another question, Dre, if I could pass the mic back to you. Why would those officers, and I want to stay local, I want to be topical in terms of how it impacts Lima. Lima has some great police officers, would you say, as a former police officer? If I say that, Dre, why did the officers, the 4 officers, the other 3 officers that were part of the George Floyd incident intervene?
Well,
I'm just asking you as a layperson.
Okay, but you know what? I'm not an officer, but they can intervene. You know, that's their buddy. Is what to me, because I've been on the other side of the law.
Yes.
It's like that's my teammate. You know, if this is what he's doing, hey, he's going to do it. Either I'm going to jump in or I'm going to just stand back. I haven't never seen a police officer, and I haven't been in trouble a lot, but enough.
Yep.
But pull another police officer or stop another police officer when he's doing something wrong. I just haven't. But I'm sure it is some out there that will do that. I mean, we've had incidents in Lima where, you know, somebody then got kicked and another officer never walked up to him and said, hey, man, why you kicked that person? Or, you know, or the tasing. Even if the tasing was wrong, whenever they tase somebody, like, hey, man, why did you tase? Maybe they correct each other at home or, you know, when they
or
get
out
back
of-
to the office. I don't know, you know, but for what I've known, you know, it just doesn't happen like
It doesn't happen like that. Let me ask you this, Chris, as we talk about this case again and its impact on Lima, and as a person who's been part of the, as they call, front line, at the end of the day, police want to get home. How do we make sure that Lima continues to progress in an area of equity in the justice system? What would you suggest?
I think the big word that's going around, the catchphrase, is de-escalation. You know, we've got to teach our officers, not only do they want to get home, but I want my son to get home.
And you've had that talk with your son.
Exactly. We want our kids to get home safely also. So I think the de-escalation is the big thing, you know, that, and I've talked to Chief Martin about this several times too. We've got to train our officers to de-escalate. You know, the big topic is the Taco Bell situation. We've all seen the video.
Right.
You know, the thing is, some people feel like even though those young men might have been rude, as a police officer, it's words. Those words cannot kill me. If that young man wants to spout off, we still have to de-escalate the situation. He's got to still be able to say, you know what, that's what he wants to get off his chest. Freedom of speech, let him say that, as long as it doesn't get physical. And then at the same tone, with those young men, we got to teach them also, listen, if that officer said, hey, turn your music down, turn your music down. You know, avoid the situation, go home.
And that's what you talk about, Dre, as somebody who's been on both sides of the law, if I can say that. You're an advocate of that.
Yes.
Follow orders.
Just do what's told. I mean, I can't say every time it's going to turn out right, but I think more times than not, you know, just do what's asked. I mean, because I'd call it respect of authority. And then if they got disrespectful with me, well, then that's when I go file my complaint. Hopefully something happens. If it doesn't, then, you know, I did what I was supposed to do.
You did what you were supposed to do. And that's a good point. What I'm going to do here is we're going to take another short break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about all three of you guys, and I've known you guys for some time, have worked with young kids. You've been spot on in terms of how to make Lima better, not only for yourselves as you've progressed over the years, but as that generation is coming up. When we come back, we're going to find out how this case was turned by a 17-year-old girl and played the video that she played, and we're going to talk about how kids are making a difference going forward. Don't go away.
You are the center of a universe. That's what we've learned in 160 years serving our community. Everybody means the world to someone. So when you're in here, or if someday you find yourself in here, and when all you can think about is the world that revolves around you, we'll be a world that revolves around you too. Mercy Health. Healthcare for the universe of you.
From early in the morning when the Happy Days stores open, turn the grills on, get the coffee turned on. Across town, the beer barrels, there's a lot of prep work that has to be done. Sauces being prepped on the stove. At Old City Prime, everything's from scratch. I think the culture in our company is that we care about our people. And in return, our people care about our customers. Thank you so much to all of our team that's worked for us, and thank you so much to all the communities that we're in for being such great customers.
We at Lima Pallet Company thank you, Lima. In 1977, we started a small family business, and today we continue to grow. Lima Pallet is a full-service pallet and crate provider. Every customer is unique, which is why we build pallets and crates to our customers' specific requirements. Because we have our own fleet of trucks, we're able to provide customers with on-time, same-day, and 24-hour emergency deliveries. Coming together is the beginning, keeping it together is progress, and working together is success. Let's continue to succeed.
Welcome back. Certainly it's been an interesting topic. There's something that I want to go back to because I know Dre made a point, and so did former Inspector Jackson. Coming up is the trials of the other officers. Let me ask you, Attorney, those other officers, and I want to go back to it, why would they not? Why did they? You're telling me they don't have an opportunity? They don't have an obligation to respond?
Well, lots of times the officers, they have a line of command just like you would in the armies or anywhere else. It depends on was this a supervisor, or had they call in and ask what to do? Did they tell them to stand down? I don't know that.
Right.
But from the surface point, they had a duty to act if they saw their fellow officer was acting above and beyond what they thought reasonable activity.
Are they going to get convicted with a trial coming up in a couple of? I'm asking like a crystal ball. I just figured all.
Well,
what
I perceive is, I perceive that after this situation, that the prosecution is going to feel pretty good about themselves, but the defense probably would be introducing some kinds of reasonable negotiated pleas if necessary, and those pleas going to probably be an Alford plea or almost what you're saying, a plea as I'm saying I'm not guilty or innocent, but I was standing there and I did see it happen, and I didn't do anything.
All right, that's a good point. What we're going to do is we're going to switch gears just a tad bit here. I'm going to talk about something because on the screen you're hearing that one of the, Inspector Jackson, one of the people who made this thing happen was a 17-year-old kid. Here's what she says after the verdict. The last hour my heart was beating so fast. I was so anxious, anxiety busting through the roof. Guilt in all 3 charges. This 17-year-old decided to take that video and make a stand. Are young people making a difference? And not just on the video surface, but the movement, whether it's the BLM movement, whether you think it works or doesn't work. Young people seem to be at the forefront of this change.
They are, and like I said, that young lady was courageous for what she did. And
yes, she was.
Flashback to last year here in Lima when we had the Black Lives Movement rallied in the square here. There were some young people. A young people that just graduated from Lima Senior. Another gentleman just come back from college. They were the forefront of the whole movement of putting that rally together. So a lot of the young people, they're starting to take a stand. They're tired.
They're tired.
And they want to see some change because, think about it. We're older, and 9 times out of 10, Jerry, Andre, myself, we probably not going to get stopped by the police and harassed.
Right,
but those younger people, I have a son that has dreads. He fits the profile, but he's going to medical school.
Mm-hmm.
But if an officer stops him and the type of vehicle he drives, is he going to understand that?
I follow you. And I'm going to jump that same topic over to you, Dre, who's a guy who collects books for kids. He does a lot for kids. Are the kids the forefront of this new movement as we see it?
It really is a group of young kids that are trying to make a difference. Justice, equality.
Equality.
Yes, it's some that are really trying. It's a nice group. One kid that I know for sure is Curtis Shannon. He's real big. Actually, he was going to school. He wanted to be a dentist, but he changed his major. Now he wants to be a lawyer or something. If I'm not mistaken, a lawyer, but definitely in the judicial system. Yes, to try to make a change.
A local kid.
Yes, a local kid.
And I want the viewers to understand, particularly on the Hello Lima, as we try to talk about community and what we're doing. The young people in Lima they're less confrontational. You don't see them. They are doing things that we should be proud of.
Mm-hmm. They're really trying to get, I guess they're trying to not fight with hands, but fight inside of the system. They're trying to get kids to become lawyers. If you want to be a prosecutor, become a police officer. They're really trying.
And as I say those, one of the things I want to say as we close this show here, justice is certainly on the top of everybody's mind. Not justice for the purpose of being justice, but equality. How do we make the verdict that happened 72 hours ago make the kind of impact that it needs to be made, not only across the country, not only in the state, but in Lima, Ohio. So Lima continues to progress. We have some leaders who have allowed us to talk about this verdict and its impact, and we're appreciative of what our local police officers are doing and what our safety services officers are doing, and we're going to continue to move the needle to make sure Lima, as a community, leads the way in this equality and this new form of justice. Don't forget, catch Hello Lima on all the social platforms, Instagrams, Twitter, Facebook, and as always, Hello Lima.
Hello Lima, brought to you by Good Food Restaurant, home of Happy Days, Beer Barrel, and Old City Prime. Also by Mercy Health Partners, 318 Restaurant and Bar, Lima Palette Company, and Fresh and Faded Hair Studio.